locations. So fortunately, you know, as I mentioned before, we are fully committed to Splashdown, having performed that final deorbit burn. We are intending to splash down off the coast of Florida on the Atlantic side, near Jacksonville, and the weather is beautiful today. We are super go with our weather conditions.
There's that term. We're waiting for the super go.
Yeah. So we are expecting loss of signal to begin around the 53-minute mark, which is now. So waiting to hear on the nets the call out for that. Once again, the crew are expecting this. You know, this let's see, 6-minute LOS period. Wait, that's not 6 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
6 minute LOS.
And yeah, so totally anticipated. Every crew that we have brought back down to Earth has gone through this at that point in time. The capsule is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. It's actually using the friction provided by the atmosphere to slow the capsule down prior to the drogue chute deployment. You know, the crew is currently was going 17,500 miles per hour. You know, that's the velocity, the speed of the space station. And so the Earth's atmosphere actually acts as that initial slowdown period.
Right, that's the drag that we get to help slow it down efficiently.
Absolutely. So once we get through the atmosphere, the capsule's then going about 350 miles per hour, at which point we deploy two drogue parachutes, which provide initial slowdown as well as stabilization. And then after the 2 initial drogue parachutes are deployed, we get the 4 mains, which are those orange and white parachutes that are very iconic, super noticeable, and we are hoping to, you know, to have all of that, views of that soon. But right now, the crew, they are in an expected loss of signal, and we expect this to go on for a few minutes.
Exactly right. Yeah, at this point, they're just suited up and kind of waiting. Dragon's doing all the work. Crew is monitoring, obviously, and you know, following along for the ride. But they are suited up, they are visors down, and they are waiting for splashdown.
So there on your screen, you can see Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne, California, you know, just right behind John and I. And the crews there are monitoring the telemetry and everything that we can track on Dragon. As we mentioned before, that communication, you know, that's not an option because that heat shield is slowing the vehicle down significantly. The external temperatures of Dragon reach about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. There's plasma building up on the side of it, and so that's what prevents the ability to really get any telemetry or communication from the capsule at that point in time. But we will hopefully be able to get views of the capsule. Well, of course, we'll bring that to you as we have those available. The first shot might be a thermal shot. That's what it has been in the past.
Well, when you heat it up to 3,500 degrees, it's a little easier to see.
Infrared's going to catch that for sure. But at this point, you know, the crew is they're in their seats. They're buckled up. I think it's about 4 Gs that they experience during the re-entry period, but it's, you know, they've trained for it. It's about the same as they experience throughout liftoff as well. So as I mentioned before, at this point we're in that communications blackout period, lasting about 6 or 7 minutes due to the formation of plasma around the spacecraft. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by Mission Control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication, as I mentioned, is possible. Now, as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself and continues to autonomously use its Draco thrusters in order to orient itself during re-entry. During re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from its orbital velocity, which, as I mentioned before, is about 17,500 miles per hour, down to about 350 miles per hour. And the top temperature that Dragon will experience upon re-entry is 3,500 degrees, which sounds toasty. I always like to say that we get a toasted marshmallow back from space because that white thermal protection system, or TPS, as you hear us refer it to, you know, it does get toasty, but the crew, they're comfortable, right?
You know, in that TPS system, that's doing all of the hard work to keep crew safe, right? The ecosystems inside the pressurized part of the vehicle are also doing the same to keep crew safe, to keep them comfortable. But those two systems have a very, very important job to do. In addition to, you know, the drogue parachutes, like you mentioned, right? Each of these systems as part of the overall Dragon capsule has a very specific and choreographed, aspect to safely allow crew to re-enter.
Absolutely.
And then once they splash down, there it's ground teams. Ground teams are really carrying, ensuring that the vehicle is safe.
And there's our first view of Dragon Endeavour re-entering the Earth's atmosphere with the Axiom 1 crew.
Heat shield doing all that work to keep that ablative heat, or to keep the heat ablated from the vehicle as it's re-entering at those speeds.
Yeah, so this is a shot from our infrared tracking camera. Once again, the crew, they're slowing down from their orbital velocity of 17,500 miles per hour. That heat shield is utilizing the Earth's atmosphere to help slow the vehicle down. Once again, we are in an expected loss of signal, or LOS period. Essentially, we're not able to receive any communication from the crew at this point in time, but as I said before, expected. The crew knows that. The teams on the ground here know that.
Right, and that was one of the critical roles earlier at beginning acquisition.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
The launch is clear, Sarah. Crew's doing fine.
Copy that. Great to hear from you.
All right, there we heard the voice of Commander MLA, Michael Lopez Alegria. They're just confirming that the crew, they're doing good.
Right on schedule, too.
Yeah. As we mentioned before, the external temperature of the capsule is about 3,500 degrees as it, makes its way through the Earth's atmosphere, but the crew, they're comfortable inside.
Dragon, you can expect automated parachute deploy at standard altitude.
Copy that, sir.
All right, so just a heads up there to the crew that they can expect to feel those initial drogue parachutes deploy.
Right.
As I was saying before, the crew's comfortable. While the exterior of the capsule is warming up, we are purging the internal cabin and their suits with nitrox or nitrogen-oxygen mixture to keep them comfortable and cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, as we're waiting for confirmation that Dragon chutes have deployed, just prior to the deployment of the initial drogue chutes, Dragon will automatically safe the propulsion system. Dragon then deploys its drogue parachutes to stabilize and decelerate the vehicle, like you mentioned earlier, Kate.
Now, just before the deployment of those drogue parachutes, seats automatically rotate 26 degrees to keep the crew within acceptable or G limits for entry and landing. Without the drogue chutes, we would have to make the mains 3 times stronger and heavier. And of course, everything about spaceflight is about weight.
Right.
So if
Dragon, SpaceX, brace for drogue window.
Racing.
All right, so just a couple moments here until those drogue parachutes are released. Shortly after the drogues are released, we'll see the release of the main parachutes, which help to further decelerate the vehicle and allow the vehicle to proceed safely to the splashdown zone in the Atlantic Ocean. The vehicle's velocity at drogue deployment is about 350 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 18,000 feet.
From that deploy, it's a pretty quick succession of events, right? We deploy the drogues very quickly after. There we go. We're seeing the drogues deploy now.
Live view from onboard Dragon Endeavour of those drogue parachutes. Capsule's going about 350 miles per hour.
Nominal ascent rate for 2 healthy drogues.
Copy, sir.
It's what you love to hear from inside the capsule.
Exactly.
Because unfortunately, they can't see the parachutes, so to hear that call out that their drogues are healthy, it's great news. So there's a better shot of those drogue parachutes from our tracking camera.
And having that single voice with the core, talking to crew, letting crew know that they're going into a planned LOS, and then coming back. All right, there's the 4 mains deploying.
All right, so
We have visual on 4 mains.
So there we heard that confirmation of 4 mains deploying.
And descent rate nominal.
Gorgeous shot of those 4 main parachutes.
1,000 meters.
Copy, 1,000 meters.
So just the crew reporting that they're only 1,000 meters
Right.
from splashdown.
Right.
Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable, and it provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. We had to learn how to make Dragon waterproof, but once you do, that's it. It's a rinse, review, reuse type process.
Right.
800 meters.
Copy, 800.
Once again, our Axiom 1 crew is targeting a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean at our Jacksonville recovery zone. The recovery teams are in the area waiting for that splashdown confirmation.
Scheduled for about 2 minutes from now, according to our clocks.
600 meters.
Copy, 600.
So we can see that capsule there, as I mentioned before, when we saw it on station and of course during launch, it was pure white.
Right.
It is no longer.
Right.
We now have really a beautiful shot of that toasted marshmallow. That thermal protection, those thermal protection systems,
Right.
Keep the crew safe.
Copy, 400.
And like you said, that's a testament to the design of the vehicle doing exactly what it was designed to do and what it has to do
Absolutely.
to do it safely. And like you said, rinse, reuse, right? It's all part of reusable spaceflight.
First live view of our crew there from inside the Dragon capsule now that they have re-entered the Earth's atmosphere.
200 meters, bracing for impact.
Copy, bracing.
I think I see that 0G indicator in the lap of Mission Specialist Mark Pathy there.
That's right. The crew is looking comfortable in their view that we saw there, ready to splash down just a few moments from now. And right now, I think those parachutes slowed the vehicle down to about, is that
About 15 miles per hour. Yep. As you can tell by the cheers behind us, we can confirm that the Dragon capsule with the AX-1 crew has splashed down. Dragon Endeavour has returned home with the Axiom 1 crew.
Dragon SpaceX, we see splashdown and mains cut.
We concur.
The SpaceX recovery ship and team that you see there on your screen has been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they're now making their way to that location.
On behalf of the entire SpaceX team, welcome back to planet Earth. The Axiom 1 mission marks the beginning of a new paradigm for human spaceflight. We hope you enjoyed the extra few days in space, and thanks for choosing to fly with SpaceX.
Sarah, to you, Ken, the team, and MCC, and all the teams that have supported us, all the engineers, technicians, great job, SpaceX. We're very grateful for the mission. Thank you.
All right, well, good calls there from MLA and Core.
And we copy all.
Crew excited to be home. All of us on ground happy to have crew back home. Now, the teams have been ready and waiting for about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes to make their way to get the crew inside Dragon.
So there we can see those 2 drogue parachutes, which were released, of course, first, and
Right.
then, they are let go in order to release the mains. That's what we see making their way back to
Exactly.
Earth as well, of course.
The whole system comes back.
Yeah.
Sarah, we're in section 3. We think we're in stable 2. We can't see very well out the windows. Disregard me. That's stable 1.
And Dragon, your comm is getting pretty hard to hear. Maybe we can have Larry relay some of that.
Yes, Sarah, we're just confirming we've got fog freezing on the windows that we are in stable 1. Certainly feels like
That right? As well.
stay out of the way. My thanks to you, everybody, all the people who have supported us around the world. Just amazing job and amazing mission.
Appreciate the words, Larry.
So that was our pilot, Larry Connor, also just expressing his thanks. Now we can see the Dragon capsule. So I just want to, kind of inform a little bit about what those calls were. So we heard the crew basically wanting to confirm stable 1, stable 2. So that's basically just the position that the capsule splashes down in. So stable 1 being this primary upright. Stable 2 would be like it's a little bit more on its side.
Okay.
And that's why they said, we can't really tell, can't quite see out the window.
Okay.
I have a feeling they were like, well, based on, the way that
How
we're
I feel.
fitting in the
Right.
sea, we think we're this way. So that's just confirmation of the position that false Quindar tone.
Yeah, false Quindars. You hear Quindar's a key up.
Yeah, so the recovery teams are now starting to approach the Dragon capsule.
Dragon SpaceX, we are go for recovery personnel to approach. You can expect personnel alongside in about 1 minute.
Perfect. So there's that safe approach call.
Understand. 1 minute.
Yeah, so the reason why the recovery team doesn't just rush there, so Dragon is loaded with hypergolic propellants, monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, and they are toxic
Right.
when you breathe them.
Right.
So for the safety of the crew, both inside and the recovery team, we wait for Dragon to basically double, triple check that all of those vents and everything are closed off and there's no venting from the Dragon capsule, like from those Draco thrusters themselves. So that's what that communication was in terms of making sure that we got the okay from the capsule,
Right.
and then Mission Control gave the okay to the recovery team. And we can see them there. There will be an individual that actually climbs on top of the capsule, and they are placing the harnessing and
The rigging, essentially,
yeah,
for hoist?
Exactly.
Okay.
The equipment that's required in order to lift Dragon onto the recovery vessel. Infrared shot there of that fast boat, as we call it, approaching, and they're basically doing another sniffing test, essentially, where you can see that the team has PPE on, personal protection equipment, respirators
Yeah, they got a
to
respirator
do
mask there.
a triple check that the vehicle is not releasing any of those toxic hypergolic vapors.
Right. As we mentioned earlier, this is a very coordinated maneuver, right? The weather has to be right. The area has to be clear. We mentioned how it's important that, other people are not in the area because this is, as Kate mentioned, you have the safety aspects of the hypergol that you need to worry about, but also just what crew is trying to do there. That's not an easy thing to do in the water. Having done a few boat maneuvers myself, it's not that easy to be doing what they're doing. So having the area clear for these teams to work and make contact with crew, but while also performing these maneuvers is really important. And you can see as well why we had to wait for such a super go for clear conditions and weather on a splashdown day. Even with nominal seas like that, you know, this is an operation that takes a lot of attention and a lot of work on ground crew's side.
Now, one thing I want to mention, you know, we have talked about Commander MLA Michael Lopez Alegria, how he has been to space before. This is the first time that he has made a water landing.
You're right.
So,
Right.
you know, he landed back on land with the space shuttle and the Soyuz.
Right.
So this water landing, you know, we gotta
It's
keep it
covered all.
interesting, right?
Exactly.
Gotta you know, get to do something new.
Yeah.
So there we can see one of the SpaceX recovery team members has climbed on board Dragon in order to start essentially equipping Dragon with the things that we need in order to lift it or hoist it up onto the recovery vessel.
Right. So on that note, Kate, you know, looking ahead at some of the operations ahead of us, you know, once the team is done rigging, the next big phases of this are really to bring a recovery ship. We're waiting for
Dragon, SpaceX, com check.
I have you loud and clear, sir. I'll be.
Have you loud and clear as well? Just wanted to verify a comm configuration update. For awareness, it appears we have a couple parachutes that are going to need to be towed out of the way for the recovery ship to approach. So there might be a slight delay to schedule, but we'll get you an update on timing soon.
Copy all.
All right, so on your screen, we could see the recovery teams basically lassoing the Dragon capsule in preparation. Now, we did hear a little bit of new information there from SpaceX Core, which is the Crew Operations and Resources Engineer, Sarah Gillis, just letting us know that a couple of those parachutes that came down with the Dragon capsule, that, you know, once the Dragon capsule lands, we cut the lines to those parachutes so that, you know, if there is a little bit of wind, the Dragon capsule doesn't get pulled along with the parachutes. Now, those parachutes, we do recover them, and we just heard some information there that we need to basically move them out of the way in order for that recovery vessel to make, the larger recovery vessel, the primary vessel, to make its way to the splashdown site.
Right, which you can see the team's doing there, right, pulling some of the parachute out of the way. And you know, it's a good call on Core to, you know, have that comm check and then let crew know, hey, there's been a slight deviation to the schedule, all nominal, all's good, but want to give you a heads up.
If I were inside Dragon capsule, I would really appreciate that information because, you know, as we see how the ships, or excuse me, how those boats are moving and how the capsule is moving, that movement is a little less dynamic right now. But a couple minutes ago, I was watching the Dragon capsule, and I thought I would probably be feeling a little unwell, with that rocking motion. So, you know, just for mental preparation and stabilization, knowing, all right, I might have 2 or 3 extra minutes to get through this.
Kind of acclimate
I can
myself
do this.
a little bit. I can hold on, right.
Dragon, SpaceX for internal video.
Go ahead, sir.
If y'all are feeling up to it, request permission to come on board via the display camera view only.
Permission granted.
Copy that.
So soon we should be getting an internal view of crew inside the Dragon capsule.
For those that have just recently joined us, after 17 days on orbit, 15 of those days on the International Space Station, we can see that the Axiom 1 crew has returned home to planet Earth. Just a few minutes ago, they made their splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean. off the coast of Florida near Jacksonville. And there we can see our recovery teams working the capsule in preparation for lifting it onto the recovery vessel. And there we have a shot of Mission Control Center here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, where John and I are located.
Yeah. You know, what I particularly loved, there's a great shot from inside the Dragon. So this is just after splashdown now. We've got a shot over the shoulders of Commander MLA and pilot Larry Connor. So they're waiting inside the Dragon to be hoisted up and out.
Yeah, we can see that they have lifted their visors, so that's the clear part there, which is currently on top of their helmet, but during the dynamic portions of the mission, so for launch, for docking, for undocking,
right.
and for splashdown, you know, we do ask them to close their visors.
Right.
So now they're able to open it up, and you know, as we mentioned before, we have been flushing the interior of the cabin as well as the inside their spacesuits themselves with cool nitrox, nitrogen-oxygen mixture, in order to keep the crew comfortable,
Exactly.
you know, throughout the recovery process.
It's amazing to me all the work that those suits do. Right, we were talking just what feels like a few days ago during launch about how those suits keep them cool. You know, even just from the drive from launch, from the launch pad, or from the suit room out to the launch pad and then up through the vehicle, but all the work that they do while on orbit and then coming back down. Earlier, Kate, when you showed the shot, or when we saw the shot of Mission Control during splashdown, for those who weren't able to join us while we were splashing down, I loved hearing the cheers from everybody here. You know, it's something I expected on launch day, but it's moving to hear it on splashdown too. You know, it shows how many people are vested in the entirety of the mission, not just launching, not just on-orbit operations, but coming back to, a mission is start to finish.
Absolutely.
And that was really, really comforting to hear. Early Monday morning here, there are still people standing outside of Mission Control here.
Oh, 100%.
Cheering it on. I love it.
We wouldn't miss it.
Yeah.
Live view there inside Dragon Endeavour with the AX-1 crew. They have splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean, and the recovery teams are working to prepare the capsule for lift onto the recovery vessel. After Dragon is on the recovery vessel and fastened down, the teams will actually open up the side hatch and poke their head in and get a quick thumbs up from the crew, and one by one we'll see the crew egress or exit from the capsule using that side hatch. So once that side hatch opens, it's actually the first time it's opened since it closed on launch day, because in order to get on board and exit the space station to egress and all that good stuff, we use the forward hatch, the hatch that's at the top of the capsule.
But the nose cone was covering, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the side hatch hasn't been open since launch day. So they got into the capsule on launch day. That side hatch was closed, and so when that side hatch opens today, it's their first breath of fresh air since taking off.
As we noted earlier, it's going to take a bit of time for the recovery vessel to make its way to Dragon. We got a call from Core saying that we had to get some parachutes out of the way so the ship can make a safe approach. But at this point, the rigging teams are working to make sure that Dragon is ready to be hoisted on that vessel as soon as it gets there.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've mentioned before, you heard us say it already today. You heard us say it a ton on launch day. Everything is carefully choreographed when it comes to space flight. The fact that the Core communicated to the crew just to let them know, hey, there's a slight delay, or you can anticipate a slight delay. It's all about safety is what it comes down to. The safety of the crew on board, as well as the safety of the support teams. In this case, the recovery teams there in the water with the crew.
Right.
That is priority number one above all else, and just making sure that everything is planned for step by step. And even in I don't want to call, the parachutes in the way off nominal, because that is a normal thing to happen, but it wasn't, we didn't plan for it, right?
Yeah.
So, for something like that where it's like, okay, the parachutes are in the way, cool, we have margin.
Dragon, SpaceX for private medical conference.
And you have procedures for that as well.
Absolutely.
Go ahead with DMC.
For awareness.
All right, so we're hearing that we're about 7 minutes out until we get to lift Dragon Endeavour onto the recovery vessel that you see there on your screen. The arch that individual there standing at the end of the ship, there's an arch above them, and that arch will actually articulate downward, and the teams in the water will attach the harnessing and everything required to hoist or lift Dragon out of the water and into that cradle there. Fun fact, that recovery vessel, that recovery vessel is named Megan after Megan MacArthur,
Fantastic.
who was our pilot for the Crew 2 mission. Our other recovery vessel for Dragon capsules, which, as we mentioned before, there's 7 sites around Florida. We have one recovery vessel here in the Atlantic, that's Megan. The other Dragon recovery vessel located in the Gulf is Shannon, for, of course, Shannon Walker, who was the first woman to fly on a Dragon capsule. So we have Megan and Shannon on board in our hearts, and of course in name here with our recovery vessels.
There we can see Megan making a slower approach now, coming up to Dragon Endeavour.
So once Dragon splashes down, there's a couple of fast boats. I should preface by saying that the recovery team is about 2 or 3 miles away from the splashdown site. For safety reasons, nobody can be super close, and so the team is situated close, but not too close. And those fast boats, the smaller boats.
Dragon, SpaceX, I copied comm on the whining noise. Do you have any insight of when that started?
I think it started right at Splashdown.
Copy that.
I was about to ask you about it. It's fairly high pitch, quite loud, and it varies in frequency a little. It's hard to tell if it's mechanical fan ventilation of some kind, or maybe some kind of vascular event. It's hard to tell.
So just a little.
Copy, Dragon. We hear it. Likely it is caused by a bilge pump that started at Splashdown. We're going to attempt to power that pump off. Let us know if it resolves.
Copy.
All right, so just a little bit of interesting communication there with the crew inside Dragon Endeavour, as well as our team here in Mission Control. So when the crew was speaking, that was Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, the teams here were able to hear background noise. And so obviously the crew inside Dragon Endeavour are able to hear that as well. So that was just a little bit of back and forth describing where the sound may have been coming from, or what it could have sounded like, and it sounds like it might be one of the onboard pumps that activates at Splashdown.
SpaceX Endeavour, whatever you just did, stopped it.
All right. Good work
Copy all. It was the bilge pump.
There we go.
It's what we do. We solve problems.
Exactly. That's the life of a flight controller. Right?
Absolutely. So the recovery teams are, as I mentioned before, they're positioned close to the splashdown site, but a safe distance away. Upon splashdown, the fast boats make their way out quickly to do the initial safing and preparation of the capsule, making sure that the hypergolic propellants are not leaving any vapors around the capsule. And here we can see our recovery vessel, Megan, making its way slowly but surely to the capsule and its splashdown site. Once again, the capsule will be hoisted up onto the deck into that cradle. And in a very sleek and swift motion, that cradle moves forward toward the platform where we will see the crew egress and head into the medical bays. Once again, when that side hatch opens, it's the first time that that side hatch has opened since launch day, which was back on April 8th.
First breath of fresh air since April 8th. And earlier, Kate, you were mentioning, you know, every bit of this operation, I mean, for all of spaceflight, is safety first, right? And when you're this close to the finish line, it's even more critical to, you know, follow those procedures, to
Absolutely.
take it slow and steady, right? Everybody wants to get across that finish line right now, but the mission's not over till they're safely back on board and you can open that hatch and get that breath of fresh air, right? So,
For sure.
you know, those fast boats make that initial contact, and Megan is coming up, you know, in good time, following along with the timeline and making sure that we safely get Dragon back on board.
We can see that there are some swells in the water today, but the waves themselves are, you know, almost non-existent. You know, really small waves there. We can see that skies are mostly blue with some clouds, as we mentioned before, with all of the weather factors that we take into account for, so things like precipitation levels, wind speeds, wave height, you know, lightning in the area.
Yeah.
And those are all factors that play into whether or not we get the go for undocking and the go for splashdown, which, you know, over the last few days has been the challenging factor for us. As we mentioned before, the crew was originally supposed to be in space for 8 days, ended up being in space for 17 days due to those weather restrictions, essentially, where we just couldn't get go criteria met for those various conditions.
All those variables have to add up to the right solution, right? And you can have one variable, it's great, we don't have a lot of wind, but if you have rain in the area, it makes it really difficult to do those 24-hour go, no-go calls. Okay, so right now it looks like we can see that the recovery teams are preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water, which will bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system known as the nest. So Dragon will remain in the nest during the crew extraction and for the journey back into port. And the capsule is currently being lifted and set on the nest. Then once it's centered and oriented, Dragon will then be translated into the hangar underneath the helipad aboard the ship so that we can open the hatch. Once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one in to check on MLA, Larry, Aton, and Mark and see if they are ready to egress out of the vehicle.
So we can see that hydraulic lift has been lowered, and they'll begin to hoist Dragon up onto the deck.
There's that crew member you mentioned who climbs aboard Dragon to ensure that the rigging gets established properly to pull the capsule back in.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for
Boom.
capsule lift.
One of my favorite parts of recovery is watching that individual. It's safe to say that, you know, recovery operations, there's a lot of training that goes into it, especially for that position.
Exactly right.
You know, to stay on top of the capsule as it's moving around and do everything safely.
And accurately, making sure that your hoist system is ready to hoist, right? Which we can see there now.
All right, so The Axiom 1 crew is now out of the water, making their way onto the deck of our recovery vessel, Megan. We can see some water splashing out there from the part of the capsule where the parachutes were stowed in. So that now is empty, with the side hatch just above. So that side hatch is where the astronauts will egress from. Before we open the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure has to be equalized with the outside environment. And once the hatch is opened, like we mentioned before, that'll be the Axiom 1's crew first breath of fresh air since they boarded Falcon 9 at the very start of their mission just earlier this month on April 8th. So there we can see that the capsule is now seated in that cradle, and that cradle will then be pulled what looks like towards us, which is actually towards the front of the boat and closer to the bays.
That ablative shield of the capsule, the TPS, is sitting on what looks like a cradle.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Copy all, sir. We're standing by.
So we can see the recovery team there, once again doing testing to make sure that any hypergol vapors have dissipated, that the capsule is not releasing any more of those vapors. As I mentioned before, the propellants that Dragon uses on board, it's different than the rocket propellants. The rocket propellants, we use our RP1 and liquid oxygen, and in order for those to burn, we have an ignition source, which is our TTEB. So, it's like when you light a match, right? There's a flame or a spark, and it's different on Dragon. There is no flame on Dragon. The propellants combust instantaneously whenever they come into contact, that monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. And they're super powerful. That's why we use them on board Dragon for those Draco engines. But they are toxic if you inhale them. So we can see the crew there had their ventilators on, and they're just performing those final tests to make sure that the Dragon Dracos are not venting any of those hypergols. It's pretty amazing to see. It has been amazing to see the pictures while the capsule was, on station. Some of them they don't look real. It's so beautiful, but it is real. And to see, images before splashdown and after splashdown, it's incredible because it just shows, how effective the materials are that we use on that thermal protection system.
Right.
As I mentioned before, we do replace the TPS for missions. That part itself is not reusable yet. So while on contrast, the interior, the bones, the structure of the capsule, that is reused.
Right.
So this capsule has now undergone its third recovery, having previously flown on the Demo 2 mission as well as the Crew 2 mission.
Yeah, it really is a testament to the capsule and just the refurbishment process, right? That really allows spaceflight to continue in this day is the reusability aspect. Seeing how clean that vehicle was at launch and still seeing 2 stickers on the inside, now seeing the third one and what it looks like coming back home. It's a testament to that ablative shield because you can see the energy that this is put through on its re-entry. So it'll be excited to see this go for the 4th one.
Yeah, absolutely. As we mentioned before, the capsule is going the same speed as the space station while it's on orbit, 17,500 miles per hour. And it slows down to about 350 miles per hour during that re-entry phase. And it's just really beautiful to see evidence of that. So So just for a little bit of orientation while we have this view still, the bottom part of the capsule, that's where the heat shield is,
Right.
and that's the part that was essentially facing or leading the capsule. So the capsule re-entered, with the bottom part first. The top part is the nose cone. That's the part that if you were,
Dragon SpaceX, capsule translation is imminent.
Copy imminent.
All right, so just a heads up there from core that the capsule is about to move or translate to forward. It's, again, just that communication to the crew because they can't really see what's going on
Right.
too well outside the window. So just, every step of the way, the core's responsibility is to give the crew a heads up of what to expect next.
Yeah.
So we heard the call out, brace for drogues, mains, splashdown, and here, for translation movement.
Yeah, really anytime crew's about to feel something, experience something, it's completely nominal, but you're right, without direct insight to it, it's really important for, core or Capcom in some cases to, play that role of letting crew know, heads up, you're about to feel something.
Yep, and of course, while crew, they're monitoring the timeline all on their own, having that, as we mentioned before, confirmation of the choreography
Right.
is important.
Yeah.
So we can see that side hatch really coming into view now, situated there in between the two windows. Just a recovery harness there in front of it, which of course, will be moved.
You can see a good dual view inside the capsule. As on the right, you have teams still in respirators working on the entry aspects of the Dragon, ensuring that it's safe and ready to be open from the side hatch. While crew on the left side is, you can see over the shoulders of MLA and Larry, awaiting for those ground teams to make ingress.
You can see the crews there still wearing their PPE or personal protection equipment.
And if you followed along during launch, similar to crew ingressing the Dragon for the first time, there is a whole team of people on the ground supporting these efforts. Likewise, during Splashdown, there's an entire team of people on the ground supporting recovery. So as the vehicle, not only is recovered from the water and is passed onto the boat, it's then handed off to people on the recovery teams who have very specific roles.
As we mentioned before, the interior for Crew Dragon, that air pressure has to be equated to the external pressure, so that, that's what's going on. You can see now the crews have taken off their PPE.
Dragon SpaceX at 36 minutes and 25 seconds after splashdown. We are go for side hatch opening. Stand by for hatch opening and egress.
Excellent.
We are watching the clock.
I think they're more than eager for that first breath of fresh air about to happen.
All right, looks like that side hatch is open.
Excellent.
Flight surgeon stepping in there to do a quick check with the crew. That white piece of framing there is a fixture that we'll put inside the, all right, we can see the recovery crews there inside the Dragon. Yes, we'll put that piece of fixturing around the side hatch just to protect it while the crews are, you know, getting out of the capsule now. All right, so just the recovery crew there giving a quick reminder to the Axiom 1 crew how things will go down in terms of, you know, egressing or exiting the capsule. We have said this before, this is something that has been rehearsed. The team practices getting in and getting out of the capsule. But, you know, just a quick rundown, you know, they've had a dynamic day.
Exactly, exactly. It's nice to have the reminders, and it's good to just say, hey, we're almost there, but a few more steps to go before we get you out. But regardless, welcome home.
This view here, we have the commander, MLA, on the left-hand side of your screen, and pilot Larry Connor on the right-hand side.
This view, you can see a few more of the ground team members just doing some final assessments and checks on the vehicle prior to crew egressing through that side hatch. Camera making way to see our crew for the first time there. All waving, all in good spirits.
See a bunch of thumbs up.
Welcome home, AX1.
Lots of smiles on board.
It's always good to see.
So on the far left there, mission specialist Mark Pathy. Next to him we had pilot Larry Connor, then to the right MLA, and on the far right Eitan Stiba. For Mark, Larry, and Eitan, it was their first trip to space. MLA had been to space previously, but as I mentioned before, this was the first time that he returned to Earth via Splashdown, so
Right.
New experience for him.
Returning home on an Endeavor, but splashing down this time instead of runway landing, right?
Yeah, that's right. I believe you said earlier that he flew on Space Shuttle Endeavor.
Yeah.
Was it STS-113?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Which, awesomely enough, is parked here in LA. And we got to go see it the other
It
day.
sure is. So the recovery teams are just preparing the side hatch there for the crew's egress.
That's that white frame you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. So just a fixture there to help protect that side hatch during this process. As we said before, this capsule has been reused. We plan to reuse it in the future. So not only to protect the crew themselves, but also the hardware.
Yeah. I imagine that's the sealing mechanism, so you want to protect that as you're walking over it and making sure it stays pristine.
All right, so that was the footrest that we saw coming out. These detach from the seats in order to allow the crew to get out of their seats a little easier. Also helps, just increase the usable volume inside Dragon. John, you and I were in the training capsule. It's about 2 weeks ago now. And it's definitely makes a difference in terms of small things like that, which seem like a small or a thin item that doesn't really take up space, but in reality, in terms of the volume that it occupies and where in that volume it is placed, it does make a difference in terms of mobility. And when you're on orbit in microgravity, it's a lot easier to get around than when you're stuck here on Earth with that pesky gravity.
Pesky gravity. Right, and I don't know if it's the same for egress, but during launch we noticed that there was a very particular way in which crew and ground teams had to ingress the vehicle because of those volumetric constraints. But allowing those footrests to come out does free up space a little easier. It's been they've spent a number of days in orbit, haven't felt the effects of gravity in a while. So making it as easy as possible to egress the vehicle is really important, not only for their comfort but also for everybody's safety.
It looks like pilot Larry Connor might be the first one to exit the vehicle.
See on the left-hand shot, the right side of that screen.
So inside Dragon capsules, we use a 5-point safety harness. So a little bit more complex than the seatbelt you and I use in our cars. It's really designed to be safe. Make sure that the crew's ergonomics, or their, the positions that their body is in during the dynamic portions of the mission, that they're strapped in properly, but also so that they're comfortable.
Right.
So it's a. Seems like that's what the recovery teams are now assisting the crews in unlatching, is that safety harness.
Right.
So we can see there Larry Connor starting to make his way out of his seat and onto the deck there on our recovery ship Megan.
See Larry making his egress from the Dragon Endeavor. You can hear the cheers in the background for it.
All right, those are his first steps back on planet Earth after spending 17 days on orbit. If it were me, I imagine I'd probably feel a little shaky, right? Because they don't have gravity up there. They did take exercise equipment to keep their muscles working while they're up there, but still, it's.
Sarah, we're going off comm. Thanks for everything. We'll see you on deck.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
My last call there from MLA to say that they're no longer going to be utilizing the Dragon communication systems. They'll just talk with everybody on the deck.
So there we saw mission specialist Mark Pathy. He was seated on the far left, or at the left window seat. All right, removing the footrests on the other two seats.
Like you said
I
Kate.
have a feeling Aton will be next.
Yeah.
No,
it
it looks like
gonna be
it's
MLA.
MLA.
Yeah, that's certainly part of the reacclimation process, is remembering those muscles that help keep you stabilized in a 1G environment. You know, you haven't used them in a few days, so it's certainly time spent after coming back home.
Oh, just
getting used
kidding.
to that.
All right, so
I moved
MLA
them over.
did a little change of seats there, so Aton will be the next one to come out. It's very, you know, that feels very on par for him. You know, we've heard that MLA really was an exemplary commander for this crew, and you know, he basically just said, no, Aton goes first, I'll be last.
Yeah.
One of my favorite phrases is leaders eat last. You know, make sure
I like
everybody
that.
else goes first.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just great to see that.
Yeah. And there we see Aton making his egress and first stance back on ground in 17 days.
Yeah, it's quite the readjustment coming back down to earth and going from, you know, regardless of how long you're up there,
Yeah.
obviously it's, you know, the longer you are, the more difficult the transition can be.
Yeah.
But, you know, even after the 17 days that they were in microgravity, you know, that's still a pretty significant change on the body.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So it's pretty amazing to see them, you know, just take those steps
Yeah.
and begin that reacclimation process.
Exactly.
Now, once they are, so for the 3 crew members that we saw exit or egress the vehicle already, you know, they walk off and they are immediately escorted into one of the medical bays that's on board. So the recovery vessels are fully equipped with medical bays to assist with, you know, any ailments or illness that the crew might be feeling at that time. It seems like everybody was in really good spirits and everybody was feeling quite well. But you know, that capability is on board the Dragon capsule, and so basically the crews just go in and get checked out by the flight surgeon and get those thumbs up.
Yeah, just that capability to have that immediate assessment is really important. Even if you are feeling perfectly fine, you're taking your great steps. You know, it's all part of the ground-based operations that ensure that you come home safely and you get out of the capsule safely.
So there we saw MLA slide down the ramp and now standing. Welcome home, Commander MLA.
With that, all 4 crew members of AX-1 are now safely out of the Crew Dragon Endeavor.
So you can see there mission control here behind us at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Checking in now that pretty much all the dynamic activities of recovery have concluded.
Right. At this point, we'll just be waiting on crew to make sure that, you know, they have those good checks that you were talking about. You know, making sure that all the medical checks coming out of the vehicle, they're happy, healthy, feeling good.
Yeah.
All right, well, as the crews are now safely aboard the recovery vessel and have completed their journey to the ISS and back, marking this moment is Axiom's Chief Business Officer, Amir Blackman.
Thank you, John, Kate, and the Axiom and SpaceX media teams. Thank you for that wonderful coverage so we could all share in this. The AX-1 mission is one of the more visible milestones of our journey to ensure that space travel is opened up to more and more of the brightest minds and eager explorers from around the world who want to make our home planet a better place. And we believe this mission, represented by the US, Canada, Spain, and Israel, advances that vision of a unified humanity reaching for the stars. Despite the strife going on the ground, the ISS crew and our astronauts continued working together as a beacon of international cooperation. In the years preceding this mission, we at Axiom Space set out to develop the procedures, foster the agreements, and build the operations and support teams needed to expand what had historically been negotiated only between governments. And with every step, we've created new precedents. We set the bar very high for ourselves, and we asked a lot of this crew. And here we are at the conclusion of an incredible mission,